Beautifully.
Okay.
Okay.
Welcome. Welcome to class 303 of we're calling it is still Faith and Calm, but we're going to call it the Godcast podcast.
The Godcast with the good friends.
Yeah, because we're doing it as a podcast, talking doing it together. So go ahead, Huskelsson. What's the topic for today?
The topic is what I wanted to call it, All You Need Is Love, after
Mhm.
the Beatles song, right?
Yeah,
Which
yes.
I looked it up, actually it was interesting. It said, it said that at the bottom, it said, somebody did a study. They had an 86-year long study at Harvard University of different Harvard graduates called the Martin study, the Grant study. And they found that they were looking for what is the biggest contribution to longevity. And they found out, they said there's no question, happiness or love, that's basically
Yes.
love.
Yeah.
But I'm going to start this class in a very unusual way. And because we're going to start from the opposite direction. So it is based on a class that was given last week by Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson. But I'll try and say it my way, not competing completely with what he's saying, but but a lot of the ideas are from him, and actually, it's a story from him and so forth. He speaks at an organization called Kesher Nafshi, which is about families who have children who problems, religious families and so forth. They went off the derech, the drugs, whatever it is, and so forth like that. And the whole theme behind this whole organization is he speaks a couple times a year to them, is about how you have to bond to the child, never throw them out of the house, always connect with them, no matter what they're doing. They're your child and so forth, and that's what God gave you. And a lot of encouragement and enthusiasm from this. But he said that he got an email after the class thing from a lady. And she said, I don't know. It feels like I'm the only person in the world who feels this way, but I was nauseated by some of the talks at this conference. Why? Because it's whatever happened, to a little bit of discipline here, and so forth. Are we all snowflakes? We're turning our kids into snowflakes. This is liberalism run amok in the religious community. Because some of the things I heard were just shocking, about parents who get up and they talk, giving a speech, and how their daughter is, in order to keep their daughter at home, they get an extra bed for her bedroom, and the boyfriend can stay over, and all sorts of things like that. It's just, she said, I'm nauseated. I'm sick of, this sounds terrible. Do we give up our Judaism for this, and so forth? I mean, who do we put first? She said. Do we put God first? Or do we put the children first? So I think we have to put God first even before the children, because we have a proof, right? I mean, there was Sarah, Menu. Sarah, she threw out, Ishmael. She kicked him out of the house. I mean, so that sounds like a very good proof. And besides, it also says in Mishlei, the one who hates his child spares the rod. Spare the rod, hate the child.
Yes.
So
But
if you don't give some discipline,
of course, Ishmael was not Jewish.
okay, well, we'll get to that, but
Yeah.
but that's separate, but it was part of the family. Abraham obviously felt, this was a family discussion, right? The
No one
husband
was
felt,
Jewish then anyway, officially, so whatever.
Avram and Sarah became the first Jews, and their lineage did not go through Yitzhak. It did not go
Ishmael,
through Ishmael.
right? So it's so he absolutely felt that that they should, and she felt no, and so forth. And then God, who's the lovey-dovey one, said, "Get ahead of him." So it seems
He agreed with Sarah.
secret with Sarah. So that seems
Yes.
like a strong proof.
Yes.
And besides, there's also a mitzvah called Hochat Tochiach. You're supposed to rebuke people who do things bad, and I don't hear anybody rebuking anybody who's doing anything bad here.
So that's what this mother was saying.
That's what she wrote in her email. Yeah, she says, so please explain your viewpoint on it, because you're probably one of the guilty parties for this whole this whole movement. She didn't. She accused him, but he felt he felt he probably wrote me because I'm the I'm pushing and pushing and pushing this idea that you never throw out your children.
Not only that, that love is the most important thing.
Right, that you love it. Love is more important than Judaism, more than God, which sounds like we've adopted some sort of right, the Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Club Head Band.
You'll go into it, but I don't think he's saying that love is more important than God. I think he's saying that love is just much more important than anything. Yeah.
All right. So here's the way to look at this whole thing.
Can I move this closer?
Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. So,
Okay.
so here's the way to look at this whole thing, and you can just project. If you need to
Okay, I'll project.
project,
Okay,
learn
go
to
ahead.
project.
Okay.
So, so it goes with this week's parsha. So the story goes as follows. There was it's a great story. In Israel, the Belz community had really was wiped out a lot in World War II, but they reestablished themselves in Israel, and they became very strong, especially in Jerusalem. And the Belzer Rebbe once was had an audience with one of his teachers in his school. It's an educator, probably a very very important person, who brought up a question like this. He said, "Listen, we have schools here, and the government tells us we're not allowed to spank or do any kind of corporal punishment in the school, otherwise we'll be thrown in jail. But is that really or just because we're worried about a fine from the government? Is that why we do it? Because I certainly grew up and it said, I mean, people got spankings. I mean, I personally, I remember I told this story. I said, I remember in my school, it was from first to fifth grade. I went to a sort of a more uh, what would you say, less modern kind of school. And there used to be next to on the front, next to the blackboard where the teacher stood, there was hanging right next to it a paddle. And it said, to use in case of emergencies. And when I was a little kid, like kindergarten or first grade, I remember there were kids who actually got paddled, although, most of it was just a threat. It just sat there. I don't think it happened more than once or twice, but everybody knew that you could get spanked in school. There was a paddle, a wooden paddle, and kept kids in line. It worked. It really, you didn't have you didn't have the discipline problems you have here. You got paddled, remember it. So everybody knew that. So he's asking the Belzer Rebbe, I mean, it says Shlomo says the one who hates the kid spare the rod, hates the kid. So maybe we're not doing the right thing. This is not what we're supposed to do. So the Belzer Rebbe says, in this week's parsha, there's an interesting section towards the end of the parsha, or last week's parsha, in that case, Bachaloscha. It talks about how the fact that there was a story with Miriam and Aaron and Moshe. And Miriam was saying something that's sort of a little cryptic, saying, are we the only prophets here? Why is Moshe not, treating Zipporah this way? And the commentators have many different opinions of what happened and so forth. But the bottom line is, it seems, at least from Rashi, that they separated.
Wait, can I
Go
say
ahead.
it slower?
Sure.
So in
Don't know all the details here.
the details
Fill in the
are
details.
that after Har Sinai, at Har Sinai, right as Har Sinai concluded, Hashem said to Moshe, "Tell the people go back to their tents, but you stay here with me." And when he was saying to go back to their tents, he meant to go back to family life, to go back to marital life. And because they'd separated at least 3 days before, and then Hashem said, "But you stay with me." And Moshe understood from that he should distance himself from his wife, and in fact he divorced her. If I think he said no, I don't know if he divorced her or just separated from her, but
Mhm.
when Miriam found out by something that happened in last week's parsha, she found out that Moshe had separated from Zipporah or divorced her, one or the other, and she was shocked. Why did he do this to his fantastic wife? And she was critical. You know,
You
it's
have to
true.
speak louder. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. So why did he do this? I'll put this close to me instead of you. So so he said, so she said, why did he have to do this? Aaron and I are also prophets, but we're still married. We keep up a marital relationship. And Hashem was furious that they were questioning Moshe. They didn't understand who Moshe is. And he's not just a prophet. Moshe was not just a prophet. And Hashem punished Miriam with tzara'as, with leprosy, which was the punishment back then, not leprosy, a disease that is sometimes called leprosy, but it's not leprosy, it's simply a skin disease. And he punished her for 7 days. And anyway, you want to continue the story?
Yeah, I don't want to get sidetracked on this story here.
Go ahead.
So anyway, So she was separated from the command for 7 days. Moshe said, God, kill no rafanala, heal her. And God says, yes, I'll heal her, but she should at least be separated for 7 days. Why? Because he says, and here's the line you got to remember. He says, because yaraka avicha, if her father spit in her face, he uses the double term, spit, spit. If he really spat in her face, she would be ashamed for at least 7 days. She should be at least 7 days outside the camp for what she did, for speaking against Moshe. And we have the beautiful praise that God gives to Moshe, because Moshe was the most humble person, and Moshe wouldn't defend himself, and God was saying all sorts of wonderful things about Moshe. But in the bottom line, he says, he uses the term, if her father spit in her face. So he says, the Belzer Rebbe says as follows, it's very interesting. How is this line translated by different commentators, the spitting in the face business? So if you look at the 1,000 years after the event with of Har Sinai, you have the first translation of the Torah by Onkelos, and Onkelos translates it. And Onkelos is always keeping exactly. He doesn't give any interpretations. He just gives a straight Aramaic translation of what it says in the Chumash. And here, though, he says im 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 tochacha, if he gave rebuke to her, then she should stay 7 days away. So he doesn't translate it as spitting. He says he rebuked her, which is sort of strange because he's not translating. He doesn't seem like he's translating, because there are words for spitting in Aramaic. He doesn't use those. He says rebuking. Then you go 1,000 years later to around the time of 1100s, 100 years before the Rambam, and the Rashi comes, and Rashi in this Chumash says something slightly different. Rashi says if her father showed a panim zawafa means like a sour face. So if he rebuked her by showing a sour face, then she should be so embarrassed and ashamed that she stays away for 7 days. So Rashi is
this is all part of the Belzer Rebbe's explanation to his teacher.
So he's saying, so he's explaining follows. It's very interesting. Watch how time progresses. Back in the original, it says spit. Then it says rebuke, which is verbal. And then it does even less. It's just showing a sour face. So, it's not, so he says you have to be very careful with how you rebuke people and so forth. But the question about is, what is the Belzer Rebbe trying to teach us here? And what is Rashi trying to teach us? And why is their Unkelos doing it? Because they always just give the simple meaning, and they're not giving the simple meaning. They're changing the meaning. They're not saying spit, which they could have said. They say something else. And here's where the class really kicks into business. So if you look at the Rambam, and he looks at this mitzvah of tochachos, of rebuking somebody, he gives you an explanation of how you're supposed to do it. And the Rambam says a very interesting thing. He would say that if you see your neighbor and he's doing some sort of avera, or he's headed in a path that's going to turn out to be very bad, and so forth, then there's a mitzvah tochachos. What does that mean? You're chayiv, you're obligated to return the person to tashuv the person l'derech hatov, to return the person to the paths of good. He doesn't say spit, but he uses the term. He says tocha tochachas. He says you are required to. That's the proof text. You are supposed to rebuke the person, but he doesn't say verbally. He could have said it. He could have said you're supposed to say this. Say to him, you know what? You're going to end up in a terrible place, and and so forth, and you're sinning against your own soul. He doesn't say that. He says you're required to bring the person back from him in order to and explain to him that this is all for his good.
In other words, it could take a lot of methods other than spitting tochacha. It can take a completely different form. It's just you have to get this person back onto the path willy-nilly.
When we read the Chumash, when we read Hebrew, when we learn things and so forth, you could think I'm being from, and this is what you're supposed to do. And somehow these rabbis say that's not the mitzvah.
Yeah.
And you might ask, well, what's the difference, and so forth. Maybe that's the way you're supposed to do it, either verbally or the way Rambam says it, or Rambam, whatever brings them back. But there's a difference. And let's just illustrate the distinction. Let's say a person sees something doing something bad, and he sees it's going to be self-destructive. And so what you do is you say, you know what? I have a mitzvah to rebuke the person. I'm going to tell the person straight, you know what? This is going to end up terrible for you. You're going to go downhill. It's proven and so forth. Hey, I'm telling you as your friend, and so forth. This is awful, and you got to straighten up your acting and improve and so forth. And the person goes home. And he says, you know what? I got another mitzvah today. I put on tefillin. I said shachris, and I got the mitzvah tochot tachachos. I also got that.
Oh, the person who did it.
The person who did it, he got it.
He thinks he did such
He
a
said
big
he did
mitzvah.
mitzvah.
He thinks he did such a
But
big
the
mitzvah.
person who was rebuked may not change. And then the second person comes and he doesn't say a thing. You're my friend. I love you. I like you. Let me tell you some things about you. He feels warm to him. He never brings up the subject. And because he shows that he's a friend and he listens and he cares for him and is understanding, that all has a big effect on the person and he improves his way of behavior.
Mm.
According to the Rambam, who got the mitzvah? The first guy or the second guy?
The second guy.
The second guy got the mitzvah. He understood what it was. He didn't have to say anything. So this idea that you're supposed to, so the Rambam is teaching us that the essence, the central point of this whole idea is you're trying to have an effect on the person and bring the person back. If you're not doing that, you're not doing this tochachos. So how does this apply with the story that we're talking about here about Sarah and Abraham and the child and so forth like that? So you might ask, which was Sarah? But as you said, with Sarah, it's a different story. Ishmael wasn't her child. Ishmael wasn't, and besides that, so he wasn't. She was protecting her child. She was protecting Yitzhak. It's a slightly different story. She was also told by God, so that's also a different story. But a lot of people who said I'm throwing my kid out of my house because he's not keeping mitzvahs, they're not told by God directly throw the kid out of the house. And Rabbi, why am I put a funny story? Well, one guy was once saying, "I'm throwing my kid out of the house."
She was ratified by God. She wasn't told by God. She was ratified.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm throwing my kid out of the house because of his behavior. So Rabbi Waiwai told him back. He says, "Well, that's very good. If you want to be like Sarah Amenu and you want to behave like her, then A, you have to be told by God that you're doing the right thing, and two, when you throw your kid out, you have to also throw the mother out." Because Sarah threw out the mother also, so throw out your child's mother also at the same time, which probably so it's a different story there and so forth. So you have to be careful in how you apply this. And the story that really brings this all down to our understanding goes as follows. There is a rabbi in Yerushalayim. He teaches in the. I looked him up. His name is Rabbi Chaim Shalom. Chaim Shalom Deitch. Yeah, Chaim Shalom Deitch. He teaches at the Temech Tzedek Shul in Yerushalayim. He didn't come from a Lubavitch family, Panovich, so forth, but he teaches in the Chabad.
He became Chabad.
He became Chabad. Yes. Mm-hmm. He was actually a student of the Shach at one time. Very interesting. Anyway, and he told Rabbi Wai the following story. There was a person he met, and this guy is an older man now, but he tells a story about his youth. He says, "I came with my family before the war to Israel, before the War of Independence, before the Second World War." And unfortunately, we lived in Haifa, and my parents died while I was still a child. And I was put in an orphanage in Jerusalem, the Diskin home. And I was alone, and I was an orphan and so forth. And he didn't have a lot of support. He was an orphan and so forth. And so he felt, what happened to him is what happened to many kids about in the early 40s and 50s. They left the religious entirely, and he went back to Haifa, and he wasn't keeping any mitzvahs anymore. And, he didn't have any family support, and he was, living whatever in Haifa. And one Friday night, he felt very lonely. And he decided, he heard that there's in this town, there happens to be a branch of the Vishnitz family. It's called the Siget Vishnitz. And Rabbi Haber was the head of it. And this was in the 40s and 50s. It wasn't a big Hasidic community there, but every Friday night he used to have a tish, and it was warming and singing, and there's food. And he decided, it's more exciting than anything else I can do Friday night. I'll go there, and there's some free food. So he gets in his car and he drives there, and he goes to there, and he likes it, the singing and the eating and the Google and everything else. And he's sitting there, and when it comes time to leave, he feels he has to confess to the rabbi, the Rebbe. So he goes over to him and he tells him, "Es ist nicht good. It's just not good." So the Rebbe says, "What's the problem? What's not good?" And he says, "Rebbe, I drove here on Shabbos to come to your tish." So what does the Rebbe do to him? So the Rebbe grabs both of his arms and holds him and says, mein Kind,
My child, my child.
my child. Wenn du kommst und wie du kommst, du bist mit uns. No matter when you come and how you come, you are one of ours. You are ours. You belong here. And he says, that changed my life. It changed my life. And the guy now has a strimel and a whole bunch of grandchildren and everything else. And why did it change his life? You would think, you would think, wait a second. We're dealing with a big rabbi here. He's religious. Somebody tells you he drove to your place on Shabbos. What should he do? What would be the proper response? He should tell him at least, it's not a good thing to drive on Shabbos. Next time when you come, don't drive. At least indicate to him and tell him he didn't do the right thing, and so forth. Tell him, next time we'll send a taxi, we'll take care of you, we'll have food for you, extra food for you, we'll send you back and so forth, whatever you need, but don't it's better for you. It's better for your parents in heaven and so forth. We'll do it very nicely. We won't do it in an angry way, but in some way, tell them, it's healthier if you don't drive on Shabbos. At least you should tell him something. He never just gave the lovey-dovey, you're with us, and no matter how you come. He doesn't care how he comes. Of course he cares how he comes. He's from Yid. But you see, this is the end of the story with Rabbi Shalom Deitch, that the chassid was telling him, he said exactly the right thing for me. Why? Because when I went there, I was looking exactly for that kind of response. Not the response that he likes me. The response is that he's going to tell me, you know what, you don't belong here. And then I would have felt perfectly fine. I could go back to my old ways and I don't have to worry about anything. I just show that, that we are from and you are not. And there's a wall and there's between us and we're different. And he says, if he had done that, I would have never become from. So that's the point of the story. All you need is love. You see, because that's what people are looking for. They're looking for attachment. They're looking for connection. They're looking for somebody who cares for them. That's what the Gartner story, that's what the Harvard 86 long year story showed. It says the most important thing in people's lives is actually feeling that they matter and that their opinions matter and that what's happening in their life matters and something that's going on with them. And that with that, a person can actually never gets addicted to anything, never gets distracted. That's the most important thing in life. And that's, I think, the lesson here is we also have to see that we learn from the story of how we really learn what Tochachos is all about. It's never about feeling good for yourself and over and negative and nothing self-righteous about somebody else, or even for wanting to feel good. But I feel sorry for you, but you have to tell you what you're doing wrong. It's always about the effect that you're having with the other person, and that's what we learned from this lesson is that's the connection, the important thing. What are you doing? What are you having the effect on the other person? So with that, I think was a great story and an interesting
It's an awesome
class.
lesson.
And with you,
It's hard to implement because when we were brought up, we weren't brought up that way. Our
we got the
generation,
paddle.
our generation was not brought up that way. And it's an incredibly important lesson. And whoever started that movement, twisted parenting, very wise person.
We can't hear you.
Whoever started that there's a program called Twisted Parenting, and it's teaching Orthodox couples how to deal with their children who are blatantly not following the path, and and it's all about it's love and love and love and love and love and more love. So and it's not the way things were done in the past. It's not the way they were done in the 1900s at all. So even, I think I don't know, it's post 2000 that such techniques started going around, and it's really it's an amazing thing, an amazing, sometimes Torah has many faces, and sometimes the face looks exactly opposite to what the face of the generation before looked. But Torah is flexible, and the Rebbe was very, 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 very warm to all people. And I remember distinctly a video where a young woman comes up to the Rebbe and leans on his table, and she's got shmatas on her head that she borrowed from somewhere, and she's trying to keep a shawl over her partly naked body, I guess. And the Rebbe's just talking to her so sweetly, and the Rebbe's saying, "You're going to see, as you do more mitzvahs, you're going to see that it's going to bring out the true you, and it's gonna be a different life for you." And just the beauty with which he spoke to her, it was really quite impressive. Anyway, we're going to turn off the recording. Thank you to everybody who came, and I'm just turning off the recording. Okay.